goTeff's pioneer product uses an ancient drought-tolerant super grain that hails from Ethiopia. 1 cup of teff offers an unmatched nutritional power punch that meets the daily requirements with 51% protein, 82% iron, 35% calcium, 62% fiber, and it's gluten-free. Teff is a true superfood that fuels some of the world's most incredible athletes, the Ethiopian long-distance runners. Teff is unequaled, unmatched. We are bringing some of nature's best nutrition to the fore. goTeff, it can fuel the world.
Hi, my name is Saron Mechale, and I am the founder of goTeff. goTeff is a mission-driven superfood company using an ancient grain from Ethiopia called teff to make snacks. And our first product is a superfood snack and topper that is great for yogurts or on top of a parfait or juice or as a cereal or even as a healthy crouton for your salad. And we target endurance athletes and health conscious consumers because teff is actually the staple grain of Ethiopia's top endurance athletes.
Hello, Saron. How are you?
Hello, it's nice to see you.
It's nice to see you as well. So I'm like fascinated with your product because I run. I mean, I am not a marathon runner per se, as in I'm not a marathon winner ever, but I run marathons. And
yeah, you do.
I met you a couple years ago through an accelerator that you were in. I was just like, I gravitated towards you because of your personality and your spunk and your commitment to keeping this grain alive and well. But before we talk about that, I want people to get to know who you are. So tell me your story of where you started.
Okay, so I mean, personally, I was born and raised in Ethiopia. So I lived my whole life there. My family still lives there, and I grew up eating this grain, like literally breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Oh, no. You just look at that. Like, I love how you just like talked about a little bit your like where you were raised, and then you stopped and you went right to the company. No.
Okay, all right. So back to me.
So much more. You're so much more than your company and your degree. You're so much more. I want to learn about you first.
All right. Well, so, I had a very typical upbringing of like a middle income, family in Ethiopia. And when I was growing up, my dad worked for the government for the majority of his career. So I saw somebody in service. I saw, like what you would call like a servant leadership. And he was actually in charge of aid during the time that Ethiopia was going through some of the like toughest famines that we've had. So he was in charge of facilitating aid, and he was in a very high position within the government at the time. So, like there were times when like I wouldn't see my dad, unless it's like at night, basically for the whole week because he's like that busy. But yeah, I just grew up a lot around like conversations about like agriculture and conversation about development and change and impact, etc., because that's just the field that my dad worked in. And I knew that growing up I wanted to do something, not sure how, but I knew I wanted to create something of my own. So yeah, that's kind of like how I grew up. I had a very typical upbringing. And then high school, I got a scholarship for like what is called an international community school or an American school. It was known as that like much longer ago. And that's how I got my chance to sort of learn about American universities, and my interest in applying abroad kind of started there. And then after high school, I applied to a bunch of schools in the US, mostly in the US, some in Europe. And I got into Brown among others, but I really liked Brown. So that was my selection. And I came to the US. I'm making this very brief. I hope.
No. You know what I mean? So I want to understand. So I want to go back to when you're at home. So you're an entrepreneur. I mean, you watch your father being in government. I mean, was your mother in government? Was there anyone in entrepreneurship? I mean, not government. Was anyone in entrepreneurship where, hey, you know what? This is in our DNA, or is this just something that you, once you came to the States, you're like, you know what? Owning my own thing sounds very intriguing.
That's
Come from where did it come from someone in your household? And also, when you decide to go this route, were they supportive?
right. That's a very good question, because for most Ethiopians and most like Africans at large, we grew up in very strictly academic family settings. And my family was no different than that, except that my mom actually, her ethnic background, her tribe is called the Gurage tribe, and they're known to be like hustlers, money, like, so anybody who knows about Ethiopian ethnic tribes knows that. But she, funny enough, her entire family, like she has like 13 siblings, all of them, most of them were in academia, transitioned into business, but my grandparents were in business. And so it's like, the Gurage tribe is known for business and for hustling. And my mom is a hustler in all ways, but didn't convert it to business because academia was like such a strong part of like her upbringing as well. People always aspire to be within more academic fields like that lead to being a doctor, or, growing up, I actually used to say, I want to be a doctor. Duh. Like, up until like the end of high school, I thought I did, because, if you were by any means smart, in typical definition, like book smart, then you're expected to be a doctor, an engineer, etc. So I interned for like,
I think that's every international child could say that, being
yeah,
West Indies child, it's doctor, engineer, or a
pilot
or lawyer. I mean, look,
or lawyer. Yes, that one.
Did you just say pirate?
Pilot. That one is
Like, what?
No, but pilot is actually a common one. I not pirate, but yes, definitely. I like interned for a couple hospitals actually. Like I spent summers and like shadowing doctors and things, like up until my junior year of high school. So I really thought I wanted to be a doctor, and then I saw like one or two like minor operations, and I was like, this is not for me. Also, people didn't seem happy. This is like a general thing, but honestly, a lot of my questions when I intern places or talk to people is mostly like, are you happy with what you do? Like, and I found that a lot of the doctors in Ethiopia, I mean, of course, it's a very difficult job. So that's like a general statement that I'm making, like total blanket statement. But some of the young ones just seemed like so drained, and also there's a lot of push towards that field back home. So I was like, are people doing it because they want to, or are people doing it because it's like expected from society? Yeah. So I always weighed that out. And then when I came to the US and I had this opportunity at a school like Brown, people are very quirky, and yeah, so that's kind of how I started exploring like other avenues of career, I guess.
So now you come into you get accepted at Brown, which is, I mean, obviously a very prestigious school. Clearly you're a very smart woman. So you go to Brown, which my cousin went to Brown. So I've been on the Brown campus many times.
Yes.
Shout out to Linda. So you go to Brown, and what was your goal? I mean, what was the goal of you get in? What did you want to do? Because now you're given this like amazing opportunity to be at this prestigious school. You could be anything. What did you decide to do while you were there?
That's a great question. So I came into Brown as an exhausted high school graduate, like, because when I was in high school, again, there was all this pressure. The scholarship program I was in was like 4 students out of, each year they select 4 students in the entire nation, so to speak. I mean, they mostly like focus on the capital, but still, like, it was a lot of pressure on those 4 kids who got into the scholarship program to apply abroad, to excel, to be a leader, a president, or whatever club we could get our hands on. So I had this internal pressure on myself for 4 years. And then once I made it to Brown, I was like, okay, like, what was the point? Let me see now what I want to do, right? But then I found that a lot of people, it's the same mentality. Like, you are such an overachiever in high school, and then you get to college and you're expected to keep achieving that level of, or at least going after this similar, like, there's sometimes a herd mentality of like people get into like, I mean, you name it, consulting, it could be just like finance, like things like large industries that a lot of people get recruited into. And I saw that it was the same cycle of you get to college, but you're doing the same thing as high school of like getting into all, trying to get all these leadership positions and trying to just fill up your resume, right? And not too many people still pause to ask themselves what they really want to do. Even at a school like Brown, which is much better than other schools at pushing you to find out what you really want to do. But at the end of the day, you have a group of overachieving adults or young adults together. Like people are going to think, okay, I need to make money. Where is the fastest, quickest route, etc. So by sophomore year, I was kind of sick of that. Honestly, I just couldn't like keep doing that same cycle. And I said, I told myself like, okay, you did that in high school. Do you want to keep doing it now, or do you want to take a pause to find out what you want to do? And thankfully, Brown is very unique, and Brown does allow you to explore that, even if that means you need to take time away from Brown. So I was fortunate enough to convince my parents that I needed time off, which is also very rare for an African household. And I went back home. So I went back home. It was supposed to be just a semester of me sort of trying to explore and see myself, like what does it look like to live as an adult in Ethiopia? I knew that my heart was still connected back to Ethiopia, and things I wanted to do still in terms of impact had to lead back to Ethiopia somehow, but I wanted to explore that further as an adult in Ethiopia. So I went back home and I started working with an NGO and also like a social enterprise that was like within the industry of like menstrual hygiene. And yeah, but obviously that semester was not just a semester. It extended to being 2 years because I kept finding opportunities and I kept exploring entrepreneurial opportunities of my own interest as well. So I was there for a full-blown 2 years until the point where my parents were like, are you going to graduate? Like, or are you going to start paying rent? Because we need you to, get on that. And then that's when I was like, all right, fine. I'll come back to Brown. Yeah.
So in regards to all right, so you spend 2 years at home, you're investigating, you're looking, you're engaging, you're definitely feeling the pressure. But then what was that aha moment that you had that it was time, besides the pressures of your parents, but what was that aha moment that you had where it's time for me to now start thinking about going back to school? And now what was it that I'm just trying to get my thoughts together here. What was that moment that you had that, yes, it's time to go back to school, but now I know what I'm going after?
Right. I think it was a series of moments, right? So part of it was like every time I was in a 9-to-5 job setting, which I did a lot of that. I worked for Plan International, one of the four largest global NGO networks that work specifically within child protection sector. And I also worked, for a social enterprise. And I did a lot, but the 9-to-5 setting wasn't, I saw myself being interested in always doing something extra. So I would find myself signed up for way too much than what would be presumed that I could handle, right? So
that's I think that's all of us, because
right.
Everything. Yeah.
Yeah. So and my dad used to always be like, are you sure you're gonna find people who understand you? You like seem to be everywhere and nowhere. Like this is so typical of what I do. And I also was working on a dance project at the time with like 40 children, and we were exploring.
I'm so sorry.
like
Wow.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, I love dancing. It's like my passion. Like honestly, that's what I'm gonna do now. I mean, goTeff is really just kind of the side. No, I'm kidding. I love dancing, and I love using dance and arts, performance arts, to speak about issues that I care about. And that's actually what I worked on while I was there. I was basically I created a project called United We Dance with the largest group of young dancers, like from age 8 to 30. There was 40 of us. We danced about Pan-Africanism. We danced about, and at the time there was a lot of cases of migrants moving, like illegal migrants. So we were actually the performers for the IOM, the International Organization of Migration, No,
Okay.
I might have gotten that wrong, but IOM is a very big organization that is very important. It's been a while. So anyway, but we were the International Day of Migration. We were the main performance at the National Theater, and it was like really cool. And anyway, I was exploring a lot during that 2 years of my of my time away from Brown. And I think one thing I realized is, okay, I am interested in something that stimulates my mind in different ways. Like that's for sure. I can't maybe sit at a desk from 9 to 5 doing one thing, or even if it's like, just a series of things, but I can't be trapped in like one niche or sector. That's something I learned very quickly. And then I also learned that entrepreneurship helps me exercise that part of like my brain, I guess, because it asks and demands from you in so many different ways. So I started a business with my aunt and a clothing line where I was doing Ethiopian clothes, but for the everyday wear. That's still a thing that I help her with, but I'm not with it as much. And then I also started, oh yeah, this is the other pivotal moment. I joined a social, I guess, business accelerator space for young people within the agricultural space. It was the first incubator for startups within agriculture in Ethiopia and East Africa, specifically for agriculture. And I was interning there, and that's when I started learning a little bit more about, hey, everybody here is young and like starting a company, like maybe I should do that. And interesting, agriculture. And then that's where how like teff came into the picture. And I actually started selling teff cakes in Ethiopia to Ethiopians, saw that there's a huge demand for teff in different forms. Then I started exploring what the heck. So teff is like a superfood now. Like
Okay. Well, all right. So
so
let's just
that's how, yeah.
for a quick second there. So now you're going.
Yes.
So what's the history of teff? I mean, what's the history? Why is it important? Because you don't hear, never heard about it here. You have, when you first came to me with this, I'm like, okay, very interesting taste. So what is it? What's the history of it? Why is it so important? Why is it taking so long to come into the States now? Why, all of a sudden you brought it in. It's been a superfood forever. Everyone knows about marathoners that are coming in from Ethiopia. It's a superfood, but yet, so
Yeah.
talk to us about the history and why all of a sudden now.
Right. So teff is an ancient grain, and definitely by no means is it discovered by goTeff or by us or anyone recently, right? So it's been cultivated for over 4,000 years. It's an ancient, very, very tiny grain. It's quite a labor of love, if you will, because Ethiopian farmers have created this way of growing it in over millennia, right? And but Ethiopia is the only country in the world where it's consumed as the main staple diet, or part of the main staple food, because, for instance, it's grown in South Africa but used for like cattle feed, right, or whatever. But in addition, also more than 95% of teff is grown in Ethiopia, because of the weather conditions, because of the soil type, and because of the fact that we have been growing this grain for generations. And that is something that it's not easy to adopt to any area, because again, it's very small, and you have to learn how to grow it and harvest it. So now, that being said, it's part of Ethiopian history because we make this like sourdough bread called injera. If you've ever had Ethiopian food, that is delicious, by the way. But so we make that out of teff, and literally it uses teff and water. That's it. And so that's part of like what we eat every single day, like breakfast, lunch, and dinner. However, in other parts of the world, because this way of primarily consuming this grain is actually very unique. It's fermented. It apparently tastes sour to people. I don't really know why. I'm actually surprised, because the first time an American told me about that, I was like, really? Like, I guess I had adopted to the taste so much, I didn't realize it tasted sour to the foreign palate. So because of all these reasons, teff hadn't penetrated any of like the global market as much, until, of course, this whole trend of superfoods came about, and then other ancient grains are being explored, etc. And then people started experimenting with teff for just baking and other needs. And that's when they realized, hey, it's an amazing grain. Also the gluten-free movement, because teff is naturally gluten-free. So that's kind of some of the main things that turned the attention towards teff.
So then now, like, yes, you are absolutely correct. There's all these different books coming out, all these different movies coming out, superfood, superfood, superfood. Being Haitian, it's funny because I remember my dad would just watch them and just shake his head thinking, oh my God, I go, really? I go, this is like, it's not like it's a superfood. Like, these are really great foods all over the world, but yet people always stay in their bubble and they're like used to the same foods all the time, all the time, all the time. And then when you go to different countries, and even simple going to Italy, and like, I'm like, oh, the pasta doesn't taste different. The pasta tastes different. Yeah, it tastes different because the flour is different, because it's done, the wheat is different. I mean, going to other locations and trying out new foods and trying out those foods that you're having here, but from there, because when people are in the States and they're creating their native foods, the biggest thing is the translation of, we can't get the same kind of grains, foods, etc., or it doesn't transport well. And so you decide to go this route. So two questions. One, why goTeff? Like, how did it start up? And two, how are you finding the grains?
Good question. Both good questions. So I guess teff, again, when I was in Ethiopia, so what happened was when I interned for this company that's within the agricultural sector, they had like a mini competition that was supposed to be, actually it was supposed to be for just the participants of the accelerator program. But of course, naturally, as an intern, I was like, I'm definitely going to be part of this competition no matter what. And I actually ended up coming in second place or something, which is like, I'm supposed to be like helping teach the other entrepreneurs, not compete with them, but that's besides the point, of course. And what happened was, to be honest, I just wanted to sell something that was like easy to sell so that I could win the competition. That's kind of how I started. And then because it was meant to be like a little mini startup competition where you like sell something in the office. And I was like, people like to eat. My mom makes these delicious teff cakes in a way that's kind of different. So it wasn't even a cake, it's like something savory, but you add something sweet on it and it's all of a sudden. Anyway, so I started that, and then I realized, wow, like teff, and then when I started reading about teff, I'm like, why don't we make teff in all these other forms? Like we eat it as an injera, that like sourdough bread, which is delicious, but maybe explore other ways. Clearly, even Ethiopians want to have teff in other ways. And then once I learned about that, the thing that really struck me and sort of frustrated me about teff in the global market is I learned that a Dutch company had claimed patent on teff as a grain. And because of that, Ethiopian farmers weren't able to get access to the market abroad, especially in Europe. And of course, my mind that's very wired to like recognize injustice and colonization and other forms of colonization, etc., was like, whoa, here we are as a nation that's been cultivating this grain for generations, and we eat this. It's part of our being. Like quite literally, people will say, "May you have injera," to say like, "May you have income." Injera is teff. You know what I mean? So it's like it's part of our language, it's part of our being. And now you see a European nation. Sorry, not nation, but a company that basically is able to claim something that easily and prohibit or like kind of put a strain on Ethiopian farmers from getting income. Like it just didn't seem fair. And so I was like, okay, so I know at least I want to be part of something to do with teff so that I can maybe help in telling the Ethiopian story of teff. And sort of that's sort of why I decided, okay, teff among the million other ventures I guess I could have gone into. And to be honest, I don't know a single thing about food. I didn't, at least at the time I started. So it was very overwhelming. Like I couldn't cook to save my life. So I was like, what the heck? But I was like, all right, people seem to like what teff is, and I can, work with that. So that's how it started. And then what was your second question?
In regards of, you answered it. You answered in regards of where's the grain coming from. So where are you?
Yes.
So like you talked about like, I mean, the history of like, actually you really did. You didn't. So you know what? That's the question. Wow, where are you getting that grain from? Because if you're having you're having a tough time because of the trademarking, where are you getting? Who's your supplier to make sure that you're getting the right grain in its purest form to create goTeff?
Exactly. So that's a very good question, and that's something that since day one, I have been trying to get teff directly from Ethiopia. And part of it is that Ethiopia itself has had banned the export of teff grain after this controversy with the Dutch company, because now the government was really scared to let any of the grain out, so that because there's 4,000 different strains or something of teff. And so they were worried that now, each one will be replicated all over the world. This Dutch company was now able to grow teff in like Australia, South Africa. They were like spreading it everywhere, which is fine if it wasn't an issue of like, like taking that from some ownership, right? And claiming it as their own. So the Ethiopian government is very sensitive about this topic still. And for goTeff, what we've done is, okay, we need to be working directly with the Ministry of Agriculture. We need to be working with the Ethiopian government as much as possible to show them that our interest is to work directly with smallholder farmers and to help create that supply chain in a meaningful and sustainable way. And to be honest, it's been very difficult. It's been very difficult to create that direct link because as much as the government and the Ministry of Agriculture, different like stakeholders are very interested in doing that, it's quite a long way to achieve that, because you have to make sure that farmers are also creating or growing teff now in a sustainable manner that doesn't like finish the amount of teff that is needed, or put a strain on the amount of teff that's needed for a country that relies on teff to feed all its people, right? So there's quite a lot there, and we started working on irrigation. We won a grant from the UNDP through Sustainable Youth programs that helped us to experiment with small scale irrigation. So if farmers have irrigation, they don't have to rely on rain. That means they don't have to farm and grow teff only once a year. That means they can grow teff more. They produce more teff, they have enough for exports. So we're still exploring.
Sorry to interrupt. So if you have all the irrigation, and I mean, for so many like centuries, teff was grown because of, like you said it, because of the weather, every single amazing moment of the environment helping teff grow the proper way. Now you're adding
something external, right?
You're adding external methods to grow it faster. Will it be the same? Will you lose out on that? I mean, so we get faster.
Yes. So when we first started learning about how to make growing teff more efficient, I tried to make sure that the approach we take is something that is not the least disruptable way, if that makes sense. So so there are so many different ways that you can make the process more efficient. Like the way you plant the seeds could be the way that you do that. It could be the harvesting, it could be but that like takes a lot of education for the small scale farmer. But what we quickly learned is the growing cycle for teff is actually quite short. It's about 3 to 4 months. So we realized, okay, so why is it only grown once a year? Of course, there's like soil replenishing that needs to happen. You can't grow the same thing throughout the year. That is true, but you can grow it at least twice a year with enough time to still grow other things in between. Okay. So we learned that. We did a ton of research, and then we realized, okay, the simplest way is like, why can't we tell farmers to do exactly what they do, except one more time in the year? So introducing small scale irrigation was just a method to get them water in the time of the year where there's no natural rainfall in Ethiopia. Yeah, and small scale irrigation, especially like solar powered irrigation, actually helps farmers in many other ways because it gives them access to energy in general, like whether it's like electricity at home, etc. So there's a ton of research there. But again, to be honest, with goTeff, once we started that route, we were in a lot of social impact-based competitions. We were in this headspace of discussing this and like researching this and applying it too, actually, through grants. But we quickly realized, hold on, like we need to create a market for this grain and create a demand for this so-called product that we're going to sell first before we do anything else. And to be honest,
I love hearing that. I really do.
Yes.
Well, that's, the thing is, because it's, again, you are bringing in a group of individuals. I mean, every year, you have all these different marathons in the United States, and obviously everyone that's running that's from Ethiopia has their secret, like, their secret step
Yes.
of like amazingness that people don't know about. But most people are very risk avert, meaning that they don't want to try. Like, I've been running, I'm like an athlete. I need to keep my body like really, really focused. And I don't want to try something new, even if it's good for me. And so creating that new audience, even though you see all these athletes doing extremely well, extremely healthy, how did you find that way of building a whole new audience for a traditional grain that so many athletes already use on a global level?
Absolutely. So that's sort of been where I now decided to put my focus on, because none of the promises I can make to a smallholder farmer in Ethiopia would be viable if I don't put my my money where my mouth is, I guess. Yeah. So and actually do the work to create the demand for this product. And more than that, I'm not just selling teff grain, right? Part of what I wanted to do is tell the story of teff, but tell the story of teff with a finished product, because we've been selling the raw ingredient for generations. Again, like, Africa is not new to the story of like, come get the ingredients from us, make it into something that you can sell at a really high price in Europe, and you benefit while we sit here with pennies. Like, that's such an old story and continues to be the reality, unfortunately, for a lot of products that come from Africa. And I didn't want that. I wanted a finished end product that would tell the story of Ethiopia and eventually will be produced in Ethiopia, made by Ethiopians for the world. And so, but I had to start again with the resources that I had on hand, which means that meant, the entrepreneurship center at Brown. That meant me talking to a ton of mentors within the food space. And thankfully, I was lucky enough to be at a university that was taking up a lot of interest in entrepreneurship. So I kind of just like was part of that wave. And what I did was just do a lot of market research. It started out with, we thought, okay, we're going to find a way to replicate what injera looks like, but, like make it unique and experienceable for whatever, easy to adopt for Americans. And then we made chips, we made crackers, we made cookies, we made so many different things. Actually, no, we start out with a bar. Sorry, that's the simple story. Actually, we start out with a bar because we thought, okay, runners, like, get a bar on your way to practice or on your way back, or the bar market is huge, obviously, the nutrition bar market, energy bar market. But we quickly learned it's a very saturated market, and B, it didn't allow us to put teff as the most highlighted product. So with bars, you have additives, you have a lot of like the sweeteners and like etc. that it ended up being like it was a bar with teff, but not a teff bar. And we wanted teff to be the center of the product. We wanted something that would even allow us to have a one ingredient product that highlighted teff as an option for people who just wanted to have teff, easy and quick. But the grain itself, like 100% whole grain teff. So honestly, that took 3 years of experimenting. So 3 years later, I would say, and 3 years full of like doubt and uncertainty and constant questioning of like, what am I doing? I don't know anything about food. So yeah, 3 years later, in a way, we were able to come up with this product that's really, really unique, very versatile. And actually, Jodi, I'm not even sure if you've had the latest like version, because I think what you've had was the instant cereal.
I never do this, but watch. Wait.
Okay. Your background looks great.
I could say this is so unprofessional that I just did that, but I don't care because I literally I had to sit there and show you. Wow.
Oh, wait. Oh, mass challenge. Yes. Okay.
So there you go. It was funny because I got it in the mail and I was like, what? I go, look at this. I go, how you have evolved, my friend.
We have come a long
I love it. Oh yeah, I love it. So I have the strawberry. Whoops.
Yeah.
So I have the strawberry coconut.
Wonderful. Okay, yeah, I have the original right here.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm so proud because when I got this, I was like, oh my God, look at the packaging and everything.
Yes.
Great.
And hey, this is a lot of your work mentoring us too. So thank you so much.
All right. So I want to sit there and talk to you about, and I love this. I love the evolution of where you are, and especially like where you're not a food person. So even though that you're not a food person, you were an entrepreneur and you did all this stuff and all the research. And it does take a lot of work where a lot of people jump into a product and they don't understand how much research that has to be done to understand the people that will go, like that will use it, and also what is the product and who is going to serve. So I love it. If you were going to talk about the highs and the lows of being an entrepreneur, talk to me about the highs and lows of being an entrepreneur.
Oof. Do we have like a couple hours or?
No, we don't.
All right, so you stop me.
Give me one high and give me one low, and how did you combat that?
Yeah, I would say, I guess the word highs and lows are very accurate. Let me just start by saying that. And the high is just kind of like that. Like it's a high of like being like, oh my God, this is something so cool. There's moments where like you come out of a meeting and you feel like you can conquer the world because you're working on a problem that maybe hasn't been, not that it hasn't been solved or attempted to be solved, but maybe not solved in the way you want to solve it. And so there's something that's very like superpower about it that's so cool that makes you think I'm creating something of my own. And it's very geeky, I guess, but it's cool. So that's exciting. And people really do cheer you on. Again, it depends on what environment you're in, because I know like a lot of places where you don't have the privilege of like, if you want to talk to somebody and you're young and you're trying to do business, like people may not give you the time of day. But fortunately, in the US particularly, and at a place like Brown and maybe the Northeast, to be more and more specific, I found a lot of support, and people are just excited about like when you're young and doing something of your own. So I've been very privileged to meet an amazing amount of people who are very supportive, who till this day I'm like surprised by how much they're willing to give me their time, their energy, their advice, like for free. And I'm like, wow. And then I realized, oh, this is because it's so freaking hard to do this. It's almost like sometimes I'd even talk to food brands that give me like a lot of advice. And I'm like, are they not even worried that I like will run with this and be like amazing and better than them? And I'm like, oh, no. It's because it's just that much harder to do what I'm doing. So it's like she could really use all the help she needs. Like, this is hard. I started understanding it that way after a while. I was like, oh, yeah, it's difficult and it's lonely. I think that's the other low about it is, of course, you could have a co-founder, which would be nice as well. But even if you do, at the end of the day, like, it is a journey that has you questioning why you do it more often than like maybe if you had again, a regular, maybe a more predictable career, because entrepreneurship, you do it knowing every day like it's a 50-50, it could fail, and you're betting on the 50 that it does not fail. And there's a lot of imposter syndrome, a lot of self-doubt, because you're having to apply yourself in so many different ways, and mostly you haven't done any of that stuff ever before, and you still have to like just take on the task and do it regardless. So yeah.
So I'm anti anyone ever using the word imposter syndrome. It drives me crazy.
Okay.
Brilliant person, because the thing is, I always say to people, you have a lane. I mean, and you're not supposed to be great at everything, but when you're great at that one thing, you do whatever it takes to excel that one thing that you're great at, and then you're bringing on other people that are great at what the other things. And so when someone puts in your mind that imposter syndrome, which of course, again, I'm going to say drives me nuts, it automatically puts the doubt that shouldn't be there. You're an entrepreneur. This is already hard what you're doing. You don't need any noise. And that word is just noise for a lot of people. So that was me on my pedestal of don't ever again. During the pandemic, you're dealing with you're working hard. You've been working on this for quite some time. The pandemic starts. You are literally starting to uptick the product. What did the pandemic do for you? I mean, we are still in it. So how has that helped you? Because when I got this, when I got this, I was so excited because we are in a pandemic and you're still moving very fast and you're still getting the product out. What did it do for you and your company and your team?
Okay, so the pandemic was like, I welcomed it initially. I understand like the actual pandemic wasn't great, but the moment of like pause and quarantine was actually really good for me, because I was in this like always running, always on the run lifestyle, as many entrepreneurs are. And that pause and shutdown of like all places gives you an excuse to also kind of introspect and like have a moment where you're like, okay, let me think and strategize and take a moment, which you don't have as much in the entrepreneurship life, I guess. So in that way, it was great. But we did have, a lot of challenge that came out of that. Like, for instance, for us, because we were for 3 years experimenting with this product, we finally came upon something that we think was great enough for like the versatility of application and our target market, etc. We knew that this is something that we needed for it to be a snack. But even to the point where you made a one ingredient product, the texture was not right. There was so many different things we were working on, and we don't know anything about food. So I was just on the brink of creating or actually winning a grant through the Rhode Island Commerce for innovation. And the grant was going to help me work with culinary experts. Like, I literally walked out of a meeting with like, food scientists like at Johnson and Wales University that were so excited about this product. They were so excited about our process and like, thought it was unique and wanted to help us make it more efficient and help us with the last bits of like, the texture and things that we needed to improve. And I walked out of that meeting thinking, wow, like this is, like I'm going to be in like a food expert now. Like finally, I'm going to know what I'm talking about. This is exciting. I'm going to learn so much. And then the pandemic hit a month later. And we were in the final stages of getting this grant to work with this organization. Johnson and Wales is a university primarily. They shut down. And so we had to be like, oh shit, am I allowed to curse here? But
You're not, but
okay.
I'll let that one go by.
Yes, please, because it's been hard. So I was like, wow, we need to figure this out on our own again after, so it was difficult. Emotionally, it was difficult as well, because you feel like you're on to something and that like gets taken away. And then, okay, so outside of that, we also had issues with like, now our product is a type of product where you have to sample, because somebody has to taste it to know that this is not some weird like, like, because it's a new grain, people are very skeptical. Like, what is it going to taste like? Is it going to taste weird? Like, if it's strawberry coconut, it's going to taste like strawberry coconut. It's delicious. If it's blueberry vanilla, it's going to taste, it's a delicious product that we've made into a very easily adoptable way for the American palate. But we need to sample it. Now you can't sample anymore, as much as we did pre-pandemic. And so that meant we had to like pivot and think about how do we make sure our customers still get to try this product in a pandemic safe way, right? And then also just stores, a lot of retail stores are closed. So we were at a time where our product needed to be improved substantially, and like our process needed to be improved and changed. We didn't have help with that. And then we knew that once we launched the product, we were already starting relationships with retail stores, and foot traffic was really low, or those stores were closing, and etc. So that was very difficult. Did you ask me what it did well, like as well, or was it just things that it?
Well, did you answer so let's just hear about that in regards of like what happened during the pandemic, the pros, the cons, but also where are you now?
Right. And then, okay, so then since then, a series of, sometimes entrepreneurship is also luck, because you just keep at something so much so that sometimes things turn your way. So we were fortunate enough, like we were even working with a kitchen in Vermont at the time. And obviously now we couldn't like travel there as much, etc. So we decided, okay, we need to bring this back, scale it back, come to Providence, because that's where we are based, or at least I am based. I say we, but mostly me. So I was like, okay, we need to find a kitchen here. And then we need to I'm going to reach out to any and everybody I know, talk to, and get consultancy from anybody in food, food experts, consultants, food scientists, food operations people. So I just started talking to a ton of people about that and just reiterating the process. And we just got in the kitchen. That just meant hours and hours in the kitchen, and a ton of like repetition and luck and some advice from people, and very kind people who helped us out. Yeah. And then through that, we were, even lucky enough to find a kitchen that was right for us to scale up. then start large scale production. Just about a month or two ago, actually, is when we started large scale production, and we finalized our process as for what we could do ourselves. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's kind of where we are, and we started sales in October. Yeah.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, I'm very
That's
excited.
so awesome. What would you say to someone, like briefly, what would you say to someone that is thinking about, because as we know, we never want to waste a great crisis. And so what would you say to someone that is thinking, you know what, I could have that job of being a pilot, or I could have the job of being a doctor or a lawyer, or just like any random job, but I've gotten laid off, I've gotten furloughed, I just don't like my job. Briefly, what would you say to them in regards of if they were interested in starting their own business?
I mean, it's a very, yeah, that question is always hard, because I sometimes some things are easier said than done. So I don't even want to say just do it, right? I don't want to say like, oh, there's no better time than now or whatever. But I do want to say that it's worth a shot. Like, it's worth a shot, and know that it will be difficult. Don't go into it knowing or thinking it's going to be easy, but at least you would have tried, or you know, and you would be happy you did. Like, I guarantee that it's worth a shot. That's I guess that's all I'll say. And good luck. And yeah, it's but it's also really fun. So yeah, you'll meet a lot of great people, and you'll realize like your own potential a lot more. So on the entrepreneurship journey is like very fulfilling, definitely.
Oh, I love that. All right, so last question. If you had a personal ask and a professional ask, I ask this of everybody, and yet everyone's always still surprised when I ask that. But if you had a personal ask and a professional ask of anyone that's listening, what would be your personal ask and what would be your professional ask?
Oh boy. I guess for a personal ask, I'm always looking for mentors. And especially like in this day and age, I've realized, you know, I am an international, not American. I am female. I am Black. Or POC, whatever you want to call it, African. Like, so I find that like, and I'm not necessarily from a very high income background, you know. So I find that to find people who are working in that space and identify with all these things is very hard, especially like work in entrepreneurship, and you know what I mean, and have a background that's similar. So if you know of like mentorship opportunities, groups, support groups of young entrepreneurs who are similar, or have similar identities, or identify with one or a few or whatever, I'd love to be connected, and let's stay connected, I guess is my personal ask. Again, I haven't had much time to think about this. Would have probably had a list of things if I did. Maybe that's why you spring this on us. But anyway, yeah, that would be my personal ask. And then from a professional, I guess for goTeff or etc., I think it's very similar, but I right now, we are at a stage where we're looking for different like grants and just funding means that it's not necessarily like equity founded, but if it is equity based, something that's still aligned with our mission. I actually really want to speak about our mission aspect too. I have not mentioned that because I talked a lot about the farmers, and I talked a lot about my work there, but I am, I thanks to Brown as well, I've had to really deconstruct like what it means to create impact now and today. And because the journey of trying to get to a point where we can scale up with like 1 million farmers in Ethiopia is quite far, when you're trying to like fix, spelling error on your label, or like understand like if an American likes, the strawberry coconut flavor versus blueberry, which is selling more, blah, blah. Like there's so many nitty gritty things when you're trying to create a food brand in America. So because of that, we realized that the impact we want to create on a larger scale with farmers is it's going to take time to build that. In the meantime, I knew that I still wanted to tie goTeff to something that is creating impact now. And part of that is rebranding Ethiopia's story. But more than that, I also have now a new partnership with an organization called Girls Gotta Run. And they're an amazing organization in Ethiopia, and they work with young runners, female runners. So they basically, through running, empower them to stay in school, so they're not like married off at a young age, etc., or like straight off to other things. And so they coach them in running. They help them through with school fees, and they help their mothers with savings and basically helping them start businesses. So it's an amazing organization. It's been my dream to work with them. And also, hey, running TEF, and I'm a girl. These girls are Ethiopian. So I just made so many connections. So I'm so excited. Like, this partnership is literally brand new as of, just the last 2 months, that we've decided, oh my God, our brands are so well aligned and we're going to work together. So it's exciting. And we're going to be launching this partnership actually on December 12th at their holiday party. So like, check us out, support us, support goTeff, support Girls Gotta Run. Yeah, that's actually a huge ask too. Follow us on Instagram, like follow us on social media, support us, buy our product. Like, we are a small business, we are minority owned, we're female owned, we're all the,
everything that's like phenomenal with this world.
Oh, thank you. You're too kind. You're too kind. You're too kind.
Saron, thank you so. Thank you so very much. I mean, the day that you approached me, it was so funny because you approached me like, I want you to sit there and help me mentor. Like, and I was like, who's this person? Like,
yeah.
and you were so very focused in regards of, I needed to meet you. Like, you needed to meet me. You literally wanted to engage with me. You worked so hard. You worked really, really hard. And I tell people, I'm not easy. I'm a very tough, I'm a tough mentor. I'm a tough boss. I'm tough with my clients, because if I'm talking to you, I care. I say from everybody, if I'm talking to you, because my silence is deadly, my silence. And so when I'm with you, I'm going to push you and push you and push you to be the best that I know that you can be. And I mean, I've watched you and you've done so well. And again, when I tell you, when this came in the mail, I was so excited because I was excited. I was so proud. And I'm like, oh my God, people are using the pandemic in such a great way. So I'm elated. I'm so proud of you in so many different ways. And I'm so happy of like all the ways that you're just continuing to grow and grow and grow. So thank you for being you. Thank you for and like making sure that your country is very in the forefront. That it's I mean, I'm from Haiti, and it's like, it is one of those moments when you hear the stories of, I mean, there was just an article of a very popular cooking magazine that a cook took our soup and that we love so much and like really just changed it, and the Haitian community went wild. Within 48 hours, the very popular cooking magazine said, we are so sorry, we didn't know. And I'm like, right, communities are very, very, we love our foods. Our foods. Yep. And when someone wants to, I mean, you coming in and adopting it, it's one thing, but you coming over and taking it over and changing it. Okay. Yeah. And
where is the credit, right? Like, and
where is the credit?
Yeah. And Ethiopia, as much as Haitians as well probably struggle, Ethiopians struggle with everywhere we go. We're told about, oh, the famine, oh, like poor people, though, like we want to rebrand, tell a different story.
Well, even when people meet me, they're like, oh, you're from Haiti? Oh, yeah. Haiti. I'm like, don't say it that way. Or you're from the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. I'm like, yes, I am. And look what we've done.
Yeah, I know. I get you. Yep.
Oh my God. So, all right. So next year, 2021, I'm going to come back to a lot of people. So I'm going to come back to everyone that I've spoken to in different parts of the years, just to see how you guys are doing and seeing how you have evolved. So between 6 or 7 months, I'm going to come back to you. Or even before that, and just ask where you are, what you're doing, how you're doing it, and just like for you to continue to share your story, because your story is very important. So I thank you for taking time out of your day just to sit there and talk to me and share your story about who you are, why you are you, and you do what you do, and for who you do it for.
Thank you for having me. I love this. I learned a lot actually just talking about the journey. So yeah,
I know, like people, a lot of business owners, small business owners, you work so hard that you forget where you came from. So bringing it back to where you came from.
Yes. Thank you, Jodi. This was awesome.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.